Okay, I think we did a mic check with just about everyone, so hopefully that works. But we'll go ahead and get started. Some people may join us in the next couple of minutes. We had a large number of people sign up for this, so it might take a moment to get everything situated. But I think we're in a good spot right now. So just to let everyone know, this meeting is being recorded, and so kind of get that out there before we start. But just want to say welcome everyone. Thank you for participating in what is now our 11th video conference as part of this charrette. I feel like these have been very productive, and if you would like to watch the previous ones, links to the videos are actually on the same website where you registered for this video conference, so you can actually go back and see the other 10. And the video recording for this one will actually be posted within the next couple of days. It does take about a day for the video to render, and then we can post it online. Just a reminder that this is one part of a two-part charrette. The other part is also on the website where you register for this. That is a virtual workshop. That's an opportunity to go in and read the currently proposed objective and policies associated with the Welaunee Arch Master Plan. There's a couple of videos embedded in that to provide some context and some background on things. And then you can comment directly on each individual policy as you see fit. The policy that you don't want to comment on, you don't have to. You can move to the ones you do, but you're welcome to comment on as many as you want. At the end of this, we will be pulling together a summary document that will capture the feedback we received through this process, as well as the virtual workshop, the policies where you can comment individually. And then subsequent to that, we'll be working on updates to the master plan, and we will be looking at opportunities to do something late August, early September is the timeframe we're aiming for. But we are watching the current pandemic situation to see what format that will look like. We do appreciate everyone joining tonight. There are a lot of people, so we'll try to make sure that we get to everyone and get the meaningful input that we've been receiving through the other ones. Tonight we are kind of focused mostly on what you see on the screen, the map. Though there's no topic that is off the table. Just the idea is that the objective and policies will eventually result in something tangible, so something that you see on the ground. So that's why we're having the map here with Floyd being able to mark things up, and we're also taking notes as well. At this point, I'm actually going to hand it over to Devin and Floyd to facilitate the charrette, but I will be here to help answer questions as needed.
Thanks, Harry. All right, so welcome back to all those that we're seeing again and all the new faces. Good evening. Just something I want to throw out to everyone. We do have some folks working in the background on tech support that will be muting the mics because we are getting some feedback at different points, and we just want to make sure that everybody can hear and be part of the discussion. So when you do go to speak, you'll have to unmute yourself before you speak, but just know that they'll be working mics in the background, so no one's trying to just cut you off or anything like that. It's just if we're getting feedback, we have to mute it so everybody can hear. This is the most folks that we've had on one so far, so this should be fun tonight to see how this works out. I think we got about 33 people right now. I hope we can have the same level of excitement we've had in the rest of them. Some of the stuff that we've got to talk about so far, we've talked about wildlife corridors, schools, school sightings, regional stormwater facilities, access to the site, housing, anything that really relates to developments come up on one of the charrettes. And if you haven't seen all those, I definitely would recommend going back if you're really interested in this and hearing what's been talked about up to this point, because I think there's a lot of good information there that everybody could just benefit from. With that, what we've done to kick these off, and sorry for those of you that have heard me say this 11 times now, but I just want to make sure that for all the new folks, they get to hear it. Floyd's going to look at take us to the map. It should be pinned on your screen right now, so everybody should be seeing the map in Floyd's hands. Can I get a nod if you guys see that? All right, seeing some nods. If anyone is on right now and they want to speak at some point, if you have a camera, please turn your camera on because I can see everybody's face. And if you want to say something, if you could just raise your hand and wave at me, I'll be able to put you in a queue to speak. And that's going to be the easiest way for me to be able to know who wants to get in line to make a comment. And if that's an issue and you can't do that, at least raise the hand inside of the chat itself. And we'll have someone monitoring, but that one will take us a little bit longer to notice than if you're on screen waving at me. So with that, I want to hand it over to Floyd and get Floyd just to get us acquainted with the site. Commissioner Minor, were you waving at me?
Yeah, hi, Devin. How you doing? Hello, everybody. This is Commissioner Rick Minor. Just wanted to recognize a couple other of my colleagues on tonight. We've got Commissioner Williams-Cox and Commissioner Lindley. Out of respect for the Sunshine Law, I'm not going to comment on anything tonight because this has not been a publicly noticed meeting with other commissioners present. But you're free to reach out to me and Commissioner Lindley, Commissioner Williams-Cox, all the other commissioners, and express your opinions to us. We'd all be happy to have a phone conversation, email, whatever. So we'll be here watching and listening to everything you all have to say. So thank you very much, Devin.
Thanks, Commissioner Minor.
Thank you, Rick. Ditto.
Thanks, Commissioner Lindley.
All right, with that, if y'all are ready, I'll go ahead and jump in. And I'll be real brief so we can just get in and have everybody get as much time to talk as possible. This is the property that we're talking about right here. This black line that kind of goes around it, that's the boundary right here. It goes around it. Just give some context. This is Roberts Road up here at the top. This is Robert Mumford's School up here, Centerville. This is Buckhead down here. This is I-10. Right here, the green hatch that we drew on here is Miccosukee Greenway, the existing Miccosukee Greenway we all love and enjoy now. This is obviously Miccosukee Road. And then, this is the parcel that we're here to talk about tonight. Just for scale, this red line here represents about 5,000 feet. This is like 1,000, each one of these little rectangles about 1,000 feet. So that's, just about a mile, just to give everybody a sense of scale so you want to kind of see how far apart things are. This map came about as we kind of do, we're available to help, anyone that comes in, any citizen that comes in has a piece of property, they want to know what they can do about it. They come in, ask us questions, and we just kind of show them what their options are. This started out like any other request that we get. And so basically we kind of looked at some of the obvious. We know that there's a blueprint project to do some type of overpass over I-10 and go somewhere north-south. So we just drew something, just kind of a placeholder to represent that, some type of circulation in that direction. Greenways Master Plan. So we showed the proposed greenway around the perimeter. That's an adopted Greenways Master Plan. And then we looked at all the, the preliminary environmental features that are just real quick off the top, like your floodplain, your wetland, your low areas and stuff that you can't touch. And that's what all this blue, green, everything is here. And so we got that on the map. And then like the purple, the tan, and the orange kind of color here is basically what's left over. It's not that you can develop 100% of that or impact 100% of that, but these are areas that you have to study further and further identify any sensitive environmental features, habitat, trees that need to be preserved, all those types of, stormwater, all that would have to come out of these areas and then be set aside. So these areas should be continued to be whittled down to a smaller area than what they're shown here. But anyway, this is just a very high level map, and that's kind of where we're at today. So we're here to get all your feedback input. I'm just going to draw on this, take notes as everybody talks.
Thanks, Floyd. What's worked really well from this point is if somebody has a comment or a question they want to just kind of throw out, and it usually leads the discussion to take itself from there. So if anybody has a comment, if I see a hand or anything like that, I'll call on you. Former Commissioner Lightsey, Debbie Lightsey. Unmute yourself, please.
For anybody else,
We got you.
I'm the voice of comp plans passed. There is language that was submitted with the comp plan amendments that spoke to a phasing plan. Do you have a map that shows, that represents the phasing with those areas outlined? That would be very helpful to all of us. So that's not a comment, that's just a question about the map resources we have available tonight.
Artie, do you have any response back for that?
Yeah, for tonight, if Floyd will draw like a north-south line, maybe through the open space area where the purple and the brown are on the left side and the mustard color on the right side. That's basically the phase 1 is on the left side and phase 2 is on the right side.
Is he putting that in your location you're directing?
Yeah, he's putting a compass rose on there.
Okay.
So yeah,
how
the
do
phase
you-
1 would be the brown and the purple, and then phase 2 is that mustard color yellow.
Okay, that will be helpful. And there's language about you don't start with this until certain things are done down in the toe. Is that correct?
As part of the master plan, it's more what happens in phase 1 that then would trigger phase 2. there's not currently language that references the tow.
Okay, I'll get out of the way now. I just wanted that on the map. I think that's helpful.
Thank you, Debbie. All right. Anybody want to start us off? I know we got some repeating customers here tonight, but we got some new folks as well. Randy, I see your hand up. You want to jump in? Unmute yourself, please, Randy.
Thank you. Okay.
No problem.
Hang on. I'm doing that.
Oh, you muted it back. There
Oh,
you go. You're good. You're good. You're good. You're good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, what I wanted to talk about was about open space and preserved land. And I know that current law allows stormwater treatment ponds to serve as credit for open space, but I hope that that would not be allowed in the Welaunee Master Plan. And I think that the problem with the stormwater ponds is they get very polluted with toxic pathogens, and they're collectors for plastic and floating garbage. And they end up kind of being eyesores, not amenities. And you can't swim in them and you can't fish in them. And they don't really provide quality habitat. So what I would like to see is, first of all, I would like to see 21st century stormwater ponds instead of the ones that we currently have, which become kind of nuisances in a way. I have been reading a lot about other ways to handle stormwater, and I've been very impressed with what they're doing in Nashua, New Hampshire. And I've previously sent a letter around, which I hope you have a copy of somewhere, that shows what they're doing there. But basically what they're doing is pre-treatment methods. So they clean the water before it flows offsite into other water bodies. And these types of RPMs, runoff prevention methods, have been used successfully in a number of cities, but Nashua is the one I was most familiar with. So I would like to see them using that kind of 21st century technology instead of creating more polluted stormwater ponds. And I would also like to see that when they create their open space, their recreational space, that they don't get credit for the stormwater ponds, because that's been done in most of the developments, I think, in Tallahassee, and I think it's kind of a shame. So I would like to see that not be the case here. So that's what I wanted to address.
Thanks, Randy. I see you, Max. Let me come back to you in just a second. Just want to see, John Reddick, are you on?
Yes, I am, Devin.
John, can you speak to that very quickly, just about stormwater ponds being used as part of open space, or is that? I think I see Craig on here too.
Yeah, and I think either one of us can speak to it. I'll just say that Ms. Digger's correct. They do count towards open space if you meet certain criteria. A lot of that goes. I mean, so if you have for example, a walled facility that has, or it's based on the slopes essentially and the shape of it, there is a requirement that it goes with the landscaping associated with it as well. But essentially, in summary, it has to meet these certain criteria to make it look like a natural body of water. But I certainly hear what Ms. Dinger's alluding to as well. So, but that's our current standard, how that operates, to be able to get credit for that as open space.
But is that something that has to be done if they're doing a master plan?
And in what sense? I mean, if they were basing it off our current standards, that's what they would have to do in order to get credit. But certainly, a master plan has the opportunity to go above and beyond that if they wanted to.
Keith, do you want to jump in on the response to that? I saw your hand come up on it.
Yeah, I'd be glad to, and thanks. I'm Keith Burnside with Growth Management. Yeah, we thanks, John. As John said, there are criteria that are given in the code. We can certainly look to provide the commissions with information on what does count and let them look at that issue. We actually don't have, just anecdotally, and we can do some research and find out, we actually don't have that many that do qualify to use it as open space. It's not an easy standard. It has to have curvilinear features. It has to have planning shelves that would support vegetation that'll support a habitat. So it's not that common that we have approved them that do qualify as open space that meet the code.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate that. And we'll keep that in the notes too, Randy. I think that's a good comment to have in there.
Yes.
So thank you for bringing that up. Coming over to Max.
Well, hey, I'm glad you brought that up because, as you know, stormwater is a big issue here, especially as our climate starts to change. Start is the wrong word. We're already in that process, but just looking at a high level, I looked at the aerial photos, and it looks like there's several large ponds or ephemeral lakes or other natural water bodies, and it seems like what's been happening lately is these are just converted into stormwater facilities. I'd like to see any of those natural features preserved, and through an environmental analysis as well, to see how much of the land around those needs to be preserved to help maintain our water bodies. And you know, there's a lot of ways that we can actually filter before it gets in there. You know, we can build constructed wetlands that act as kidneys that go into these natural water bodies, because otherwise we get these large compensating volume stormwater ponds that really probably don't do what they're supposed to do. And next year, this also is something I'd like to see any of these plans comply with the stormwater rules that the Blue-Green Algae Task Force is coming up with, and that will be on the table next year in 2021. We just need to do a better job of preserving what we have and enhancing it. And the last thing I will say is, you look at, I just drove down the road to Seminole Grand, and you can see the microcystis growing in their stormwater facility. I mean, that's definitely a health hazard. And you look at FAMU Way, there's one pond, the bonds, or the FAMU pond, all the waterfowl like hanging out over there, all the migrating birds, but it's also full of microcystis. There's no planting around it. And we just need to be better about how we construct it, because we have the technology and the smarts to do this. Thanks.
Thanks, Max. Appreciate that. I got two folks coming up. I got Kathy Mcguire and then Stephen Martin. So I want to jump to Kathy, and then I'll come back to you, Stephen. Kathy, you there?
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I'm mute. Can you hear me?
We got you.
Okay. So I was interested in how you see the kind of the multimodal aspect of the property developing. It's got a lot of nice places, it looks like, for walking trails, bike trails, and it's so big, it looks like it could use a transit hub perhaps. So how do you anticipate that will play out on the property?
I'm going to ask Artie to talk to that one a little bit. This has come up on a couple of our other charrettes that we've had, and I think Artie's probably the best to jump on that. Artie, you want to take it?
Yeah, there's a couple different components to it. One is we would have the greenway that goes around the entire perimeter of it. Then one of the draft policies that we have talks about complete streets, and as part of that, many of these roadways would have not only sidewalks, but potentially like a shared use path, like a 10 to 12 foot path on the side of them. That would kind of connect people from the interior to the greenway, or the other way around. Within the purple areas, those are the mixed use areas. You'd probably see more of an urban cross section, so that'd be wider sidewalks and on-street bike facilities versus a shared use path. But kind of looking at internal mobility. In terms of things like transit and like the bus system or something, we'll be working with Star Metro as we move closer to the time of there's a couple different steps. This is the kind of the master plan and the comp plan standpoint. We'll be having to do a plan unit development. Would need to be approved for the site before development happens, and then you have site plans. But so depending on when that comes in, there may be different transit needs, but we imagine that those purple areas would serve as transit hubs. One of the things that, and it's part of the planning for not just this, but for everything we're continuously looking at is connected and automated vehicles. And in fact, over near Seaside on 30A, as well as in Gainesville, they're testing out things like self-driving small buses. So this is technology that we're constantly monitoring and looking at. That may be something that fits here. Kind of depends on the technology at the time, but we definitely see that as kind of a possibility for the future, not only here, but in multiple parts of our community as well. So yeah, that's bus, bike, walking, and greenways. I think I covered the multimodal components.
Artie, could you just real quick, you mentioned complete streets. Will you just give a quick definition of what complete streets is for anyone that may not know?
Yeah, sorry about that. That is kind of planning jargon. Try to not do that too often. Thanks for catching that. Yeah, complete streets is a concept that roadways and streets are designed to, one, fit into the context of an area. And by context, we talk about, is it kind of an urban area? So like the more purple areas on here, is it more suburban? Is it rural? And having a street that fits the context. And then within that context that meets the needs of users of various ages and abilities. And so, one of the examples that I like to give of a really good example of a complete street locally is Franklin Boulevard. It is very urban. You have that connection right between Leon High School and Cascades Park. There's on-street bike facilities, which are really good for people who are bike commuting. There's a sidewalk on one side. There's also a trail on the other side. I think it's a 10-foot concrete trail. And so those are good for people who may use mobility devices, may use micromobility like scooters, things like that. Maybe less comfortable than your average bike commuter riding on a bike, so they may want to be off of the road, and so they can use that trail. So it really accommodates a lot of different types of users, as well as the people who are driving a car, but it doesn't necessarily give the car driver priority. It makes sure that there's a mode for everyone.
Thanks, Artie. All right, I got Steve Martin next, but 1 second, Steve. I just want to let everybody know who I have in queue, just to make sure they all know I saw them. I got Amy Datz in queue. I have Debbie Lightsey in queue, and then Mike Breslin after that. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Stephen. Thanks for coming back, and good to see you again.
Okay. I just want to get back to stormwater ponds, and I've said at an earlier meeting about the past is often the best predictor of the future. Of course, we have the issue at the other end of the plantation on the toe with Canopy Pond that's very different from what had been planned and expected to be needed. With that intense level of development, unexpected problems have come about. So that is certainly, in my mind, an eyesore, and I wouldn't consider that to be open space. I don't know if that pond is or not. Dove Pond. I know Dove Pond is going to become a major stormwater drainage reservoir. Can you go into some detail about what is the future of Dove Pond? I know that at one point we're going to build a berm on the side towards Miccosukee Road because of flooding back in the 1990s down in Lafayette Oaks. And I'm concerned that Dove Pond, which had been aesthetically appealing before any of this development, as I visited numerous times, is going to lose that appeal and fall prey, much like what's now called Canopy Pond, and is going to be more of an eyesore than anything. And then just to tie back to the greenways and the multimodal, I've said this before, and I know this is on the other side of I-10 on the Canopy property that this isn't involved with, but I do hope the Centerville Road side of the toe gets connected to the greenways. I do hope that. I could go across the toe to get to the canopy or to the greenway, the walkway on the Miccosukee Road side in the past. But that's certainly not the same walk that it used to be to get over there. Thank you for allowing me to talk.
Thanks, Stephen. Artie, do you and Gary want to kind of tag team Dove Pond? I don't know which one of you might be the best to speak to that.
I would actually defer maybe to Gary or growth management, seeing as that's not in the arch. I'm a little bit less familiar with it than maybe our growth management department.
Okay. Keith, do you know anything about that one, or is that just something he would need to contact growth management to get more info on?
All right, trying to unmute here. If Craig's still on and able to talk, he may want to talk to it briefly. I mean, we don't want to occupy all your time, but yeah, we'd be glad to get back to you on that, Mr. Martin.
Okay.
And provide something generally if you want to share it with a bigger group too.
Right. There's been a lot of construction. Up on the berm he was asking about has been built. So there's more that we could talk about that.
Keith, would you mind you and Craig getting with Mr. Martin just offline and having that conversation?
We'd be glad to.
All right.
Sure.
Thank you for the comment, Mr. Martin.
All right. I'm going to come to Amy now. Amy, I think I saw you up there. You still
Yeah.
there? There you are. Okay.
I'm unmuted, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I know when I went to Destin years ago, they had an internal. They used the small transit buses. They were, people refer to them as dial-a-rides, but they had the buses going around so that if kids want to go out and visit their friends and don't need to have somebody driving around, or I'm wondering, will there be any commercialism in these purple areas where, like, if a kid wants to go to the grocery store or, do something, if it's possible that they could have something like the Destin model where, they just went out to a stop, picked up the phone and said, "Hi, I'm waiting here at the stop," or they called in on a cell phone or through an app and said, "Hi, can you pick me up in a half hour at such and such a stop?" So that you can reduce the internal trips within the site. Is that something that you guys have been were referring to when we talked about transit a minute ago?
Artie, I think that kind of goes back to what you were talking about with transit. You want to touch on that?
Yeah, the details of exactly how that would work are kind of more fine-grained than what we usually get to at this stage. But in terms of kind of the bigger picture, yes, that's something that could be considered. There's kind of looks like there'll be future options for, as part of like a city bus service or something, the potential for automated circulators that would kind of serve that purpose. I know in some communities that's also a private sector sort of thing. There's some of the companies that operate scooters and things like that that also have systems like that may work. So I don't know exactly how it would function here. Again, we may not see development here for a number of years, and so the technology changes a little bit. But in concept, yes, that's something that could be considered.
Are the dashed lines the potential major roadways and then they'll be connecting neighborhood roadways within that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, is there going to be a school within the boundaries?
Most likely, but that'll have to be based on, as development happens, the impact that would have to the overall school system, and something that we work with Leon County Schools on is school siting and kind of understanding the threshold of when a new school would be built.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks for your comments. I want to pause real quick and just mention that we had Commissioner Elaine Bryant join. Commissioner Bryant, just want to welcome you. Thanks for being here. All right. With that, I'll move over to Debbie. Go ahead, Debbie.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you all.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
There you go. Go ahead.
Am I up?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I've got one question and 3 quick comments that I just want you to record, and we don't have to discuss them at length.
Okay.
I've been on previous calls in this charrette series, and there's been a lot of discussion about a master stormwater plan and a transportation plan. My question is, can we get your assurance that there would be a master stormwater plan and a transportation plan completed prior to the first PUD application being accepted, since the stormwater and the transportation system have to be comprehensive, and the PUDs are going to come in little pieces. Y'all keep telling me that yes, there's going to be a master stormwater plan and a transportation plan, but can we get an assurance that those are done before the first PUD application is accepted, so we know how the pieces fit together and that the roads and the stormwater system are laid out and in the right place, the right capacity?
Artie, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I can speak to that. The draft master plan right now says it has a policy in there that says that a master stormwater plan would have to be completed and it would have to be approved by the city before the first PUD could be approved. I don't see that changing. I don't think we've had any public comment on that not happening. So yeah, as it's currently written, that would have to happen, yes.
And the transportation plan?
The transportation plan, that's something that we'll look at as we are taking in the public comment. Right now, we just kind of have the major roadways lined out, but I think we've got a lot of feedback on that. So that's something I'll be working on a draft for to roll out hopefully fairly soon here.
Okay, now, and my first comment is I would hope to see a maximum of 2 cuts, roadway cuts on Miccosukee Road. I know the developer is allowed up to 3, but if you see the scale on the top and you see how close these cuts are together down here, that is too many cuts in a very short distance. So I would think you could make your mind up about where you're going to put 2 cuts and try to make that work. The second comment is we've had discussions in the past about minimum densities in the phase 2 residential and having a mixture of housing types and densities in phase 2 such that you can not have use and socioeconomic segregation in large lot in one place with a lot of wealthy people and just that single kind of housing type. So I hope you'll put down the comment that we want minimum densities and a mixture of housing types and densities, particularly in phase 2. I think you're going to get a lot of that in phase 1. We want this all to be walkable and have very small scale community, retail, and commercial mixed in with the house in these huge big housing areas so that people can walk to buy a gallon of milk or whatever. So they don't have to get in their car in this huge phase 2 area to get to any place to shop. And my last personal comment is that I hope that we will get some prohibition in this plan about clear cutting all the trees and leveling all the properties as we have seen in Canopy. The individual houses in Canopy are attractive, but there's not anything larger than a twig standing there except the one token huge oak tree. And I'm hoping that as these PUDs come in, we will try to have a requirement so that on each block of housing, a few mature trees are left so that this doesn't look like a desert with just little boxes set down in it. That's not in keeping with the character of this community. And somebody has already mentioned my comment about a public transit hub, and that is not something that can be done after these 2 or 3 or 4 come in. You're going to have to plan for that in advance. And I would suggest that the public transit hub and any school sites be donated by the landowner. That's the way that's always worked in this community with large properties like this that are master planned. And I hope that which is the norm in this community, will be continued on this property. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. So in the lineup, I got Mike Breton, Julian Hare, Brian Welch, and Max. So with Mike, I'm coming back to you. Oh, hold on one second, Mike. Laurel, can you unmute Mike? Okay, you're on, Mike. Go for it.
Oh, I'm on now?
You're good.
Okay, thanks. Some of my comments will follow up on Debbie's, I guess. My main concern is how do neighborhoods get set up in this this property? You know, I guess what I'm most familiar with in traveling around are very long streets ending in cul-de-sacs, and there's, you know, that's not conducive to creating neighborhoods. And that, you know, the idea of that Debbie mentioned of some commercial spread, I mean, just how the roads go and maybe a grid more so than very long lines, and the placement of the schools, you know, how are we looking to create neighborhoods within, say, the phase 1 area?
Artie, I'm coming back to you on that one.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, in the phase 1 area, kind of the way it's currently written is you would have kind of the mixed use centers, and those would look something, and the two northern ones would be comparable to like Bannerman Crossing in scale, and then you would have the higher density residential development, and then kind of the one closest to I-10 would be quite a bit larger than those, but then buffered from Buckhead with more of a lower density residential. Through this process, that we've had a lot of conversation about this, and so looking at some of the language that we've developed for the Bond and Griffin Heights neighborhoods in terms of incorporating additional non-residential into those areas. And so that's something I'll be evaluating as we move forward, kind of looking at that very thing. So, yeah,
will you be laying out the neighborhood streets as was mentioned before, or just these major roads?
So for this plan, we'll just be laying out the major roads, but I think we do, and actually I try to remember which policy it is and what it says, but I know at some point we actually do talk about trying to create more of a grid network, especially in some of the mixed use areas and the areas around that. It is kind of one of those things where, you know, we would prefer to have the grid streets, but we'll also want to make sure that we are designing the roadway network with slopes and the kind of protecting natural features and stuff. So it may not be like a perfect grid, but we'll be trying to balance those two. But yeah, I think connectivity is going to be key. And you usually get better connectivity when you don't have the road network that looks like spaghetti wrapped on a plate.
Exactly. And just be thinking of what's a kind of a neighborhood size, and in terms of the number of acres that would fit into that. You know, I mean, to me, it's I don't know if the centers there are going to fit or not, but it's you know, I just think it's worthwhile to spend some time thinking of what's the geography, so to speak, of a neighborhood, and trying to get it put onto this site, adapting, as you said, as necessary.
I think that's a good point.
There's a value of, I mean, I think there's a real community that can develop within neighborhoods, but it's part of it is the geography. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mike. All right. Up next, I have Julian Hare, and I got Brian Welch, Max, and then Randy after that, and then Pam Hall. I saw you, Pam. Welcome to the crew tonight. All right, Julian, I think you're maybe on the phone or on an attendee, so I'm not sure I can see you, but feel free to speak at any point.
I have no idea where I am on there, but you did a microphone check initially and it was working fine. Can you hear me?
I hear you. You're good to go.
Okay, I appreciate getting called. I have two issues. One, going back to the stormwater, I understand that it can be a convoluted process to get something declared as open space or something that is a higher level of visual enjoyment. But is there a reason? And I live in Centerville Trace, so I already have a history with the developer. And I appreciated the diplomatic way it was pointed out that he hasn't established a real good track record with stormwater ponds at this point. Is there a reason why we cannot define the type of stormwater ponds we want in the master plan? Is there no in between the big round hole and something that is very visually pleasing?
Let's see. Artie, I want to come to you and potentially Keith on this one. I want to start with you, Artie, and then if we need to, let's jump over to Keith.
Yeah, I think we, to the level that we can at this point, we do note that we want the stormwater facilities to be designed to be an amenity and part of the open space. I know some of the capability of doing that has to do with basically like the topography of the earth and the slopes and things like that, as well as some of the engineering that's a little bit beyond my understanding. So I may have to defer to growth management on kind of some of the details of that. But I know that in general that we do talk about it not just being a round hole in the ground, but actually being something that serves as an amenity.
Keith, you want to add anything to that?
Already said it very well, and there's not much to add, but yeah, I think your point is very good, that there needs to be something in between the round hole and the other end of the spectrum. And while we don't necessarily want to have a bunch, of ponds that just all qualify for open space, I think we probably do want to provide some incentive that a developer would create a pond that's not just a square pond with a fence around it. And one of the key ways that we can incentivize that is through letting them count that as open space if it qualifies, if it meets what the community wants it to look like. And of course, there's a difference between the aesthetics and the biological function, and that may be a discussion we need to have a little bit further as well. I'll go into a lot more.
I'm sorry. I think we do have some successful examples within the community. Even Speed Spencer Stevens Park it's a very attractive park.
Yes, ma'am, I'd agree.
Essentially a round pond in the center, but it's landscaped well. It's not fenced off. One
of the best examples is Lake Ellen.
But you'll look for that in between. Now, the second issue that I have, and this is of the deepest concern to me, because I am the historical cultural aspect of this property seems to be it's being ignored. There's already one cemetery that had been identified and fenced off near the Greenway that is getting dangerously close to construction. There doesn't seem to be a lot of concern about that. There are two other suspected cemeteries on the property, and I would not be surprised if there were not a third plantation cemetery that's closer to the big house. But, and I have to pick on Dove Pond in particular, because I drove past there a few weeks ago and was absolutely horrified to see what had been a beautiful natural pond of great cultural significance, where we suspect there may be another cemetery up on the hillside, but that hillside's getting torn down, flattened out, and the pond being expanded to what end I do not know. The other cemetery would be in this new phase, in the arch. There's already some work that's been done on that. Cadaver dogs have been out there with volunteers, and I would guess as a local historian that that cemetery probably comprises anywhere from 2 to 4 acres near the Testarena Church. So my question is, what's been done or what has occurred with the developer and having discussions about that he will or should be encountering cultural artifacts and possible cemeteries in the area?
Just one clarification for this one before we jump into that. This parcel currently does not have a developer. It's just the landowner. that's looking at this right now. So just want to put that out there.
Okay.
And with John or Keith, would you guys want to talk to a natural features? I think that's where this would come up. Or Keith, you want to jump on it?
I can't specifically for this one, just because we've had some conversations about the New Hope Cemetery. We've reached out to the state Division of Historical Resources. We have what we call a natural features inventory processes that would be required before any PUD, any plan use development occurs, and that's a standard city process. As part of that, we ask for a cultural resources clearance, meaning they have to submit documentation to the state Division of Historical Resources, who then clears the project or identifies any potential cultural resources. Just to make sure that the state had the area around Testarina Church on their list, we've reached out to them as a result of comments that we've received during this series of charrettes. And so they've actually added that to their state inventory. This is just a backstop to make sure that nothing gets missed when these NFIs go through for properties in this area.
Okay, one final question. I'm delighted to hear that. So that's a step ahead. Who would I speak to specifically if I had research to share that would be most helpful?
It'd probably be a person on our staff. I can reach out to you directly and get you in touch with him.
Okay.
Yeah, his name's Rodney Cassidy, but I can get you his contact info.
Okay, I would very much appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Will do. Thank you.
And if Keith, if he could pass that on to me as well, just to make sure that we're accounting for everything as we're doing the master plan, that'd be helpful.
We'll do. I'll need to get her contact info from you too, Devin or Artie.
Okay.
Make sure that happens, Keith.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Julianne. Now, Brian, I got you up next, but give me just 1 second. I got a long list coming after you, so I just want to let everybody know who I have. I got Brian Welch next, Max, Randy, Pam, Beth Hollister, Danielle Irwin, and then Steve Martin. I think that's everyone I've seen so far. All right, go ahead, Brian.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you so much. Just as an FYI, I know there's several candidates on here, and I myself am also a candidate for the Leon County Commission District 4 seat, which obviously this project rests right in the middle of. And I just want to let you guys know I'm mostly just listening and learning. And I appreciate your time as staff, and I appreciate certainly the input of the citizens who know a lot more about this than I do, as you guys do as well. So I'm mostly just learning, but from a personal perspective, I live in Centerville Conservation Community, which is approximately 2 miles up the road from the intersection that's going to be going in at Roberts and Bradfordville and Centerville. And that is personally interesting to me as to what you guys can tell me about that in terms of what that looks like. I know I read something yesterday that you've acknowledged that's going to be a difficult intersection to deal with, or what that's going to look like. And then also, I know on that corner right there, previously there was a little road that connected the roundabout near Roberts and Montford that would connect up to the parkway. And I don't see that on here, but I see Floyd is drawing it now. Can you guys sort of explain the rationale for that, or the timeline for that little road, Roberts and Montford? I think that might create some problems for folks, just because traffic in that little roundabout is already quite difficult, especially in the morning and mid-afternoon. And all my kids go to Roberts and Montford. 2 of my kids do. So if you guys could shed some light on that intersection, what you think that might look like, the timeline for when that might go in, and also that little road between Roberts and Montford. Thank you.
Artie, is this one that you and Floyd may want to tag team? I'm not sure who would have the best answer for him.
Yeah, all I know really at this point is when we kind of drew the dash line north-south and just connected up to Roberts, it was just kind of a conceptual north-south. I know that Blueprint is currently looking at the alignment, and so I don't know for sure that that's actually where everything's going to tie together. and I don't know if we have anyone from Blueprint here tonight.
I don't think I've seen anyone on already from Blueprint tonight.
Okay, I know they've joined some of the previous ones. So at this point, I don't really know because I'm not exactly sure that that's where that connection will be made in terms of what that would look like. It'll be based on the Blueprint study and what they come up with the alignment that they're currently setting.
Floyd, do you have anything you could add to that just from any of the work you're doing with Blueprint?
Yes, as far as this is right here, it's just like Artie said, this was done like a few years ago, and basically just as a placeholder, like, okay, something on the south end, something on the north end, we don't know if that's where it's going to go, wherever. I will say, as far as this potentially moving eastward, the furthest it can move eastward is a fixed point, probably somewhere in this area, because it has to be at least 2 miles from the interchange to the east, which is the Mahan interchange. So it has a fixed point on the east end, and of course the west end is the what you call it, the electric easement right away over here. So that it's going to cross somewhere between here, and so I think that's yet to be determined. And I think, like I said, already said, Blueprint is looking at topo, environmental conditions, all that, determine the best place to cross that, and then also the best place to potentially align this up here. Yeah, and that's something that's yet to be determined.
But we're certain though about the intersection at Roberts and can you guys hear me? Yeah. We're certain there's going to be an intersection there, right, of some kind, or a roundabout at Roberts and Centerville and Bradfordville?
Floyd, do you have an answer for that? I can't say with 100% certainty, but from what I've heard, and it sounds like there's a strong possibility there's some type of connection up at this general vicinity. Where it ends up, I'm not sure.
Do you guys have any idea when that decision-making process will happen? I mean, talking years or months or?
Probably within the next year to 2 years, which is probably like 2 years being matched, because I believe that they said they plan to start, I think, within 2 years from now, and then have it completed by, was it 2025? I think the year that I've heard.
Guys, the Welaunee PD&E public outreach is August 24th to 27th. The road alignment is going to be determined relatively soon. I think it probably takes them a little while to get the alignment in, but no more than months. We're just talking months. And then the design will take 1.5 years, and then the construction will begin in 2022. So Brian, the decision about where this road is going to be and how it's going to intersect with Roberts, which is not, as far as I know, not determined because there's a big conservation easement there, is going to happen most likely within the next month or so.
Okay, thank you, Pam.
Yeah, that sounds like the timeline that I've heard.
Okay,
so it'd be
good.
within the next couple of months, and then
Soon.
design, I think, starting in 2023, or be done by then,
No,
and then construction after that.
2020. Yeah, construction, yeah.
Yeah.
And Brian, I would recommend, if you can, follow all the Blueprint meetings that are happening and just stay up on that as they go through it. And those, you'll be able to get all those from the Blueprint website at blueprintia.org.
Okay.
Come talk to me, Brian.
Yeah. I will definitely talk to you, Dr. Pam. Thank you, guys.
Brian, appreciate you being here. All right, I'm going to pause again real quick. We are at 7:30, and this meeting was to end at 7:30, but we did start a little bit late, and I do have about 5 people in line to speak. If everybody's okay, I'd like to take us till 8 o'clock. We will have to stop it at 8, but if no one has an issue, we're having good, respectful conversation right now. And I think it would be good to keep it going to at least 8. Is everyone okay with that? Just get some nods. All right, looks like everybody seems to be okay. All right, got Randy up next.
Am I unmuted?
Hold on one second. Sorry, Randy. I got to go back. I skipped Max. Max, you're next. And then Randy will come back to you. Sorry, Max.
No problem.
Well, I have a couple things. Speaking to what Debbie said earlier about clear cutting, this is not just a hugger issue. Every piece of vegetation, every tree that is removed has dollars down the road in stormwater management and mitigation. So I would really like to see an actual plan to preserve a large portion of these trees and to retain the character of our community. Number 2, I believe that low intensity development should be standard. And there was talk about how we can make the developers, construct ponds the way we want to. It's pretty easy. We can come up with a new ordinance and we can alter what is allowed. And within the low intensity development, there are actually incentives that developers get. And finally, if we're talking about equitable investment here, and if you look at our comp plan, we're supposed to be developing further south and to the west. All this money is going to be coming up here, and in the city commission meetings, I've heard, well, this isn't going to cost us anything. That's not really true, because decades down the road, when we take over maintaining these facilities and the roads, those are real dollars. And I'd like to see, before the commission votes this year to approve, an actual accounting, a projection of how much this development is going to cost the city of Tallahassee down the road. Is it 10 million, 100, 500 million? I don't know the answer, but that should be addressed. Thanks.
Thanks, Max. Appreciate the comments. And coming to Randy.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I would like to speak more generally about my overall vision for Welaunee. Right now, it's kind of a blank slate, and I feel like what happens there with the master plan could be a template for future growth. It could really be a showcase for how we want to build into the future. And instead, what I'm seeing is a lot of roads, a lot of cars, and I'm really concerned, with the fact that we're going to end up with same old, and that government tax dollars are going to be used to subsidize the growth instead of making the growth pay for itself. And following up on what Max just said, I would like to see Welaunee subjected to a fiscal impact analysis to compare the revenues generated by the development to the public cost of providing the services, such as the roads and water and sewer and schools and fire and police and all the other services. And if the ratio of revenue to services is not making a positive contribution to the municipal budget, then I would like to see the permits not being issued until that equation can be brought into the plus column for the government and for the public. Otherwise, we're just using the people's money to underwrite private ventures, and that's a form of corporate welfare that I don't think benefits the taxpayers overall. And even though Welaunee's now been annexed into the city and into the USA boundary, the government still holds the power to issue or deny permits and to shape what is built. So I would like to see that kind of a fiscal impact analysis done, and to make Welaunee pay for itself, to make growth pay for itself. So here's my vision, and this is my wish list, and I would be very happy if any large number of these things are done, but this is what I would like to see. I would like to see solar homes built to LEED standards so we can achieve our carbon neutrality goals. I'd like to see solar plug-ins and solar panels on every roof. I would like to see individual rooftop solar, which means the more that's on people's roofs, the less open space we have to give up to build giant industrial solar facilities elsewhere, and the less electricity the city has to generate itself. I'd like to see solar electric chargers in convenient places so people can recharge their cars. I've spoken previously in other meetings about not having natural gas hookups. I think this should be 100% electric development, so that when we finally do achieve 100% green energy, the correct infrastructure will already be in place. I'd like to see a requirement that there be native trees and landscaping, and a no net loss goal for our trees, because an aggressive replacement program could result in us reaching our carbon neutrality goals as well. I'd like to see clustered homes so that large swaths of interconnected forests can be left intact. I'd like to see electric people movers, like the type that Google operates for its commuting employees. I'm not sure how that would be funded. It could be through a combination of homeowners' dues, grants, and developer contributions. I'd like to see innovative designs like gray water recycling, community greenhouses, community gardens, and addressing the point that was made about what are the streets going to look like. There was a study done by the city of Longmont, Colorado, that found that when you have narrower streets, and by narrower they mean 22 to 30 feet wide, you actually have fewer accidents. In addition, people drive slower. It costs less to build those roads. It costs less to maintain those roads. They contribute less stormwater runoff that has to be treated. And additionally, they create a more pedestrian friendly and aesthetically pleasing environment. So that's my wish list. And I think a lot of these things could be done through the master plan and through withholding permits until this development meets the standard of creating a positive for the community in terms of revenue and in terms of reaching carbon neutrality, and in terms of being a template for what future growth should look like. So that's my wish list, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Randy. We appreciate the comments. All right. Gonna run through the list real quick. I got Pam, Beth, Danielle, and then Steve. So I want to go ahead and come back to Pam. Pam, good to see you.
Hi, guys. I'm sorry I missed the first half, but this has all been very entertaining. Thank you guys for everyone participating. I want to say a few things to what some people have already spoken, and to Randy's issue about fiscal impact analysis. I noticed there's a number of commissioners on. I think you really need to understand that residential development never pays for itself. Analyses have been done all over the country, and including in Tallahassee by Tall Timbers, residential development costs about $1.50 for every dollar of revenue you get from them. So residential development never pays for itself. Well, that doesn't mean we shouldn't have residential development. You try to offset that with commercial costs, with commercial generating more. But to Randy's point, there's very few developments in this town that pay for themselves, because residential development requires more services than you ever get back in the revenue from both sales tax and property values. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the business with open spaces. We have a sort of a budget for open spaces here as a land use category. And I would like to be pretty clear that there's a distinction between open space that's for conservation and preservation features, habitat and wildlife preservation corridors, and open space that creates community facilities, active parks, and places where there's copses of trees and collections of trees maintained, and open space that various subdivisions have, and the stormwater facilities. So those are not part of the budget of the big open space for land use, but they are part of the requirements of the developer. At least I would say they should be part of the requirements of the developer when they come in. And the other thing is, somebody said that the biggest cost the city blueprint is doing is at $47 million for the Welaunee and Shamrock, and probably another $40 million for the interstate exchange. So there's $87 million upfront going into this parcel. That's public monies to start with. But the thing I think we haven't grappled with here is how low density this place is actually going to be. I mean, I know we say 10 units per acre and 6 units per acre, but there's no minimums. So they could be, quarter acre lots, which never pay for themselves. And the other thing to realize is in the town centers, the densities for town centers are 8 to 20,000 square feet per acre, or 4 to 12.5. That's a neighborhood center. Bannerman, which you guys have been showing here, is less than 6,000 square feet per acre. It is predominantly asphalt. So these are the FARs, the Florida area ratios. These are all like 0.1 to maybe 0.5. This is not high density development. This is suburban auto-oriented development. And I know this is hard for this town to sort of comprehend, but you need to get floor area ratios of 1, of 1.5 in order to have really the capacity to have transit. Bannerman Crossing, as you're writing down there, is 0.13. So it's only 5,700 square feet per acre. An acre is 44,000 square feet. So think about how little of Bannerman actually has rooftop versus asphalt. This is also a hard thing I think for us to understand about the housing, is that when we build single family houses that are 1,800 square feet and we put them on a lot and we have a car and a driveway, we're already at what the canopy I think is only at 2.3 or 2.4 dwelling units per acre, gross dwelling units per acre. That's not dense. So I think if we're trying to, this community, I think they're gonna start building on it as soon as that road gets built. There's gonna be PUDs coming out in 5 years on the western portion, in my opinion. I might be wrong, but depending upon how the U.S. economy goes. But this thing is gonna be around in the middle of the 21st century. And it's, unfortunately, we're still really building it to look like the 1990s. We haven't really grappled with the amount of density and the amount of housing that you need to put on here to make this be potentially transit oriented. And if it's not transit oriented, then it's gonna have, you have to have incomes of 100 to 120,000 to live up here, because you have to own cars. And a car is a fixed cost. It's not like a house where you can vary the cost of the house so much. You can vary the cost of the car, but then it doesn't run. So somehow, as a community, we have to not rebuild Killearn Estates. That's an auto-oriented suburban area. It's got a nice mix of housing to some extent, but it's still auto-oriented. We don't rebuild Bannerman Crossing because that's a really low-density commercial area in which you drive around. You might get out of your car and walk, but you drive to it, park. So as a community, we have to really think this has got to be 3 to 4 times as dense as we're used to thinking to get anywhere near that fiscal impact analysis, that positive fiscal impact analysis that Randy was talking about, or actually having something that's going to work in the middle of the 20th century for family incomes, family types, and transportation. Okay, that's my spiel.
Thanks, Pam. We appreciate it. I think you're talking right to the planners' hearts on here. I think everybody's smiling really big right now, and it's nice to see that.
But it's going to be hard for this community to accept it. It's much, much denser than what we're used to. It's really, it's very, very different.
Yeah,
and save trees, because you can do both, but it's going to be hard.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Pam. Floyd, before we jump real quick, we had a comment. Could you draw the existing USA on that map? Do you know how to, kind of where that runs right now?
Yeah, you can kind of direct me, but does it more or less follow this boundary, or is it up here at Roberts Road? I don't know off the top of my head.
Artie,
no, it's a big right angle coming down in that wetlands. The wetland in the middle? Nope, the wetland in the middle. Somewhere around there. Start at the top. Yep, it goes down about, yeah, maybe even a little over to the left. It's a big right angle.
Okay.
Yeah, it's roughly the area that we have designated as phase 1 and phase 2. It's not perfectly, but it's
and then it goes. Well, yeah, it crosses over. Okay.
So it's pretty close right there. I think it was Danielle that asked. Danielle, does that help a little bit? All right, cool. All right, I'm coming to Beth now. Beth Hollis, are you still on with us? Unmute yourself and you. Oh, one more.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Hey, Beth, good to see you.
Hi. So this has all been really good input, and I wanted to thank the staff, planning and growth management for putting this on. Really appreciate it. So my question, I kind of alluded to it last time 2 weeks ago, is my interest is really, in the future when the owner gets together with his development team and the planners and the civil engineers and what's going to happen, what's going to go on paper at that time. So my question is whether, I understand there's an existing development agreement and, I don't know all the legal instruments, but whether the owner might consider a friendly amendment, something along the lines of a community benefit agreement. And it would very simply speak to the concepts that we all know so well, right? Traditional neighborhood developments, new urbanism, lead for sustainable communities, and on and on. I mean, there's a plethora of resources that would basically neatly package and encapsulate what a lot of people in these charrettes have been bringing up. Set aside land for energy and water, renewable energies and water infrastructure, low impact, all that kind of stuff is kind of neatly packaged in these guidelines. So that if there is a perceived weakness in the existing comprehensive plan, this might be a more meaningful guide for the future. And that's I just want to ask that question. I don't know is it Gary Hunter and Robert Volpe, whether they think the owners might be interested in that or consider it. And they might find that in addition to all these resources, that there's maybe also human resources, community volunteers that would be more than willing to help out. So that's my question.
Thanks, Gary. Gary, you talk to that.
I can hear you.
Could you hear it?
Here, I'm taking it off speaker. Does that make it better?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I could understand, I think, Ms. Hollister's question. It appeared to suggest one thing that I'm not sure is accurate, which was that there's an existing development agreement dealing with this parcel. There is an urban services agreement that deals with the dedication of land related to certain mainly roadway systems and green systems throughout the site, and the provision of the city to provide water and sewer, but there isn't an agreement, Ms. Hollister, that deals with the future development of the site.
Okay.
There is such an agreement on canopy to the south, but that has nothing to do with this parcel, which is the Arch. And I do represent the canopy developer, but that person is different than the developer, the landowner that owns the Arch. And there is no development interest related to the Arch. There's no plan, to my knowledge at least, and I think I would know, of dealing with any developer on issues relating to the Arch. I've said this before, this is a legacy parcel to my client, the family that has owned this land for a long time. Many of the things I hear people discussing tonight are items that I'm sure my client would say they would like for this property to look like when it ultimately gets developed. And the balance, of course, with all of the items I've heard, I mean, the list that Randy went through, some of the very good points that Pam always makes, Debbie's points, which are good points, and I agree with many of them, is a balance of what the cost impact of that is on development. I mean, we've got this competing interest of saying we want the developed parcel to be inclusive of all socioeconomic levels within our community. Well, you can't price out the property in a way that you can't financially develop the site in a way to make that possible. So listen, at the end of the day, whoever develops this property is going to have to comply with whatever standards are governing that. My suggestion today, and this master plan or this comp plan amendment is done in a way to put a sort of 30,000-foot level guide to that future process, and then it's implemented through PUDs that will get into the more granular aspects of what you're suggesting. But I mean, my client wants this property to be something the whole community's proud of when it's done, but they also obviously want to be able to one day be able to sell it and facilitate what's being visioned and not make it such that it wouldn't be possible financially.
Absolutely.
That doesn't help any of it.
No, it's got to make market sense. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate it. Thanks, Beth. Appreciate the comment. All right, we got about 10 minutes left. I still have two folks here in queue. Without stopping, we're going to go straight to Danielle. Danielle, go for it.
Great, thank you. So First, I won't reiterate some of the amazing comments from Debbie Lightsey, Randy Denker, as well as Pam Hall, but I agree with everything that's been said. And it seems to me, I've already mentioned that this is a great opportunity for the city to show great vision in terms of what future development will look like in a 100% renewable city of Tallahassee. It seems to me that there's a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars that will be spent in roadway that's public funds and in utilities being brought out to the site that is also public money. So the public, meaning the city, has an opportunity to build into this master plan certain expectations for what type of design we want to see. Again, I hearken to what Randy's list. So I want to just mention a couple of things. First, there's an opportunity for phase 1 to be connected to the commercial centers, particularly the large purple down there, without first going to the streets. So I'd like to see some sort of connectivity there. We want to make sure that we're building communities that can be live, work, play communities, and ones that are age friendly. So if you're 8 years old and you want to ride your bike somewhere, whether it's the town center or the main commercial area, that's going to be an opportunity for you. Or if you're 80 years old and you want to age in place, that there's an opportunity for that as well. When we have phase 1 and phase 2 separated the way they are right now with the urban services area, you know, the USA boundary is supposed to designate where we will be limiting sprawl to. And the way phase 2 is laid out right now looks to me a lot like sprawl. But yet we're going to expand the USA boundary out to the outskirts of where the entire Welaunee Arch Master Plan covers, to the north and the east and the south there. So we should not be having urban sprawl type of development out there. We should make sure that we've got mixed housing types so that we're not segregating where certain houses are. So I definitely want to see mixed housing type. I'm concerned that the affordable housing that will be brought into the development, both of phase 1 and phase 2, will not be present in each of the PUDs. So I'm wondering if there's space to be able to have at least a percentage of the housing options in each of the PUDs be affordable housing. In terms of stormwater, a lot of stormwater concerns in the county overall, and we don't want to exacerbate them by this development. I would encourage also there be an emphasis on low impact design stormwater techniques so that we're retaining that stormwater on site as much as possible, reducing the need for retention ponds, you know, considering the use of constructed wetlands as needed, but certainly low impact design techniques. Let's see, and then 2 other points that I'll make. One is I've already shared with Artie the lead for neighborhood design criteria, and I encourage that to be incorporated into the way we lay out the neighborhood. So that means that you're having connectivity to neighborhood dependent type of commercial services. You're minimizing the use of cul-de-sacs so that you're increasing connectivity between streets, and that these buildings that will be constructed, whether commercial or residential, will be energy efficient. If we're spending this much public money to make this development possible in terms of bringing the roadways and bringing the utilities, seems like the city's in a really good position to be able to say, we want the design then of the buildings to be energy efficient and not just the minimum building code standards, but to go above and beyond that. I encourage the city to look at the Florida Green Building Coalition standards for green building. They're a little bit easier to achieve than LEED standards, although still accomplishing the same end goal, just without the additional expense of commissioning for the buildings. So putting some sort of rating system requirement or other type of energy efficiency goal is just going to serve to move the city forward in terms of meeting its 100% renewable energy goals. So those are a couple of the high points there. I would just, as a final parting thought, will also mention that, we don't want to be creating more heat island, urban heat island impacts here. So anything that we can do to try and reduce the urban heat island effect by either looking at the albedo of roof surfaces, the the use of porous pavement and asphalt that's a lighter color, so it reflects as opposed to absorb heat. Looking at shade. So, I mean, a tree for tree, no net loss is all well and good, but when you take away a large canopy area and reduce it to a baby tree that you're replacing it with that has no shade at all, now you've reduced the pedestrian-friendly nature of the complete streets that we're trying to incorporate. So shade needs to be taken into account, especially as we are facing more extreme heat days in the future. So we really do need to look at it holistically, and I encourage some of those concepts to be included at this phase, because this is what's going to set the vision for the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle. Appreciate you being here. All right, Stephen Martin, you're up next. You're good to go. We can hear you.
I will follow your wish and keep this conversation respectful, sir. So much of this, though, does come down to values. And it's 4 years ago this month that they did that clear cutting off Fleischman and what kind of turned into canopy. Let's hope we don't see that again. A mention was made I mean, before that, what had been there is not there anymore. It had been a place I could go and get away from it all and experience so much of something that I can't experience much anymore. There's something that's been lost, and I don't know how many people understand that, but I pray to God that that doesn't happen to the other end of the plantation. There was mention made of the natural features inventory. And again, I hope they do a better preservation at the other end than this end, where they totally transformed the topography, took away the hill slopes so that it could be developed more intensively. Now, Commissioner Lightsey brought up about the clear cutting that occurred and the intense level of development there. I do wish Commissioner Lightsey and her fellow commissioners who approved of canopy had listened to me when I came to them multiple times and warned them about this development and what it was going to do. But she and her fellow commissioners supported it. And I hope in hindsight now, if she had to do it again, she would no longer have supported it. She did mention how much it has caused in irreparable damage. And then finally, wildlife corridors, there's been mention made of. I know a meeting that I observed a replay of where Kelly Ott brought up the fact that having corridors isn't enough to keep the wildlife coexisting with humans. We could coexist with wildlife on what is now canopy before it was developed. I spent plenty of time over there, saw deer regularly. One time for a few weeks, saw a pack of coyotes there, saw bobcats, otters, what I can't see there anymore. If you leave large enough contiguous areas as habitat, we can coexist with them, but they've got to be large areas. I'm talking multiple acres, hundreds of acres, not corridors. So I just wanted to throw that out, and thank you for allowing me to speak again, and I hope I kept it respectful.
Thanks, Stephen. We appreciate you being here.
Okay.
All right, we are 2 minutes till 8. There are quite a few folks that have been on the call just kind of listening in. If there's anything that any of those folks that haven't spoke want to say real briefly, real quick, or any last comments, I just wanted to open it up real quick to any of those folks. I know we have Ramona Abernathy Payne, Jack Porter, who else we have? John Bailey, I think, is still on. Any of you folks want to say anything or have any last comments? Will Crowley?
Just glad that you guys are doing this. It was very informative. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. All right. With that, thanks everybody for being on it. We've made it through 11 of these charrettes now, and I think they've actually went pretty well. A lot of information. I know we got Commissioner Minor's been right there with us the whole time. Commissioner Minor, you want to say anything about being there with us on these?
Yeah, Devin, thank you very much. I think this is the very last live conference, right? Last. So it's been a long ride, but I tell you, Artie, Devin, Floyd, MJ, Mindy, the whole team has done a really good job. But I've spoken with a lot of folks that have been on these video conferences after the fact, and the general consensus that I hear is that the staff here is doing just a tremendous job, very professional, really listening to the comments that have been provided, and looking forward to seeing all the sorry, my kids are participating too. So but looking forward to seeing all the comments written down and presented to the county and city commissions. But want to thank everybody for being here, and to the staff, I can't thank you guys enough. It's been a lot of work, I know, but these charrettes have been very, very helpful.
Thanks, Mr. Meyer. Commissioner Minley, you had something? Was there anything you had?
I really, really appreciate the tone and the professionalism and some great ideas. I really have learned a lot too. So thanks everybody. You guys are wonderful. Hi, Debbie.
Thanks, Commissioner Minley.
Thanks, staff. You guys are amazing. Pleasure. Bye.
And I think Commissioner Williams-Cox was still on. Was there anything you wanted to close out with, Commissioner Williams-Cox?
I just wanted to say thank you all for all of your hard work. Wasn't able to make the previous ones, but if they were all like this, then I know we are well on our way to a successful endeavor. So thank you to the staff, and thank you to everyone who's been participating. Your work is very evident, and I look forward to where we land with this. Thank you.
And I think we also had Commissioner Bryant was on, but I don't know if she's still here with us or not. It looks like she may have left.
Hey, Devin, real quick.
Sure.
Just one thing. Also want to recognize Gary Hunter and Robert Volpe. These are the two attorneys representing the owners. And the fact that they, either one or both of them, have been on every single one of these video conferences says a lot. So, I mean, and I think they've been very helpful to answer questions that citizens have proposed. So I want to thank the two of them, too.
Thanks, Commissioner Meyer. And thanks again to everyone that's come on. We really appreciate all the citizens. A lot of the folks that have been on here multiple times. I know we've seen some of the faces quite a few times. Some have been on almost every one. And Pam, we really appreciate you being on a lot of those. You've been here and bringing other people to the table. So I just want to thank everybody for that. But also, I want to thank our team and all of growth management that helped us as well. And there's no way I could have facilitated this without all the folks working behind the scenes as well. So thanks to Jacob Fortunas and Laurel Harbin as well for running all the background on helping us mute, unmute, and getting the communications going. If you guys have not filled out the virtual survey that Artie has put up, the virtual, what do you call it, Artie, the virtual charrette?
The virtual workshop.
Virtual workshop. If you guys have not done that one, I've reminded you every time, please go do that and share it with anyone you know that has not done it, that might need to do it. And if comments come up, that'll be the place now to start putting your comments, because like we said, this is the last of these charrettes. And then Artie will have more information, I think, as the other charrettes come forward. Artie, anything you want to close with?
I'll just say, if you could, please participate in the virtual workshop, kind of the online survey by August 10th. We'll need to close that out so we can start pulling the comments out and incorporating them in with the comments we receive through this process. So to give us time to make sure that, and we do read all the comments and address them. If you could fill them out by August 10th.
Appreciate it, Artie. All right, well, hopefully we'll have some good discussions in the future, and maybe one day we can all get back in the room together. But until then, if this is how we have to do it, I've enjoyed doing it with everyone. So everyone have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.